Hi, I'm DuEwa Frazier, the host of Nerdacity podcast, and today you're listening to episode 36, featuring my guest, award-winning poet, professor, and memoirist, Dr. Randall Horton. Randall is the recipient of the Gwendolyn Brooks Poetry Award, the Bea Gonzalez Poetry Award, the Great Lakes College Association New Writers Award for Creative Nonfiction, and a National Endowment of the Arts Fellowship in Literature. In addition, Randall has been interviewed on Fox News, NPR, CTNPR, C-SPAN, the New Haven Register, and countless journals, magazines, and radio shows. He currently sits on the advisory board of PEN America's PEN Prison Writing Program. In 2018 to 2019, Randall was selected as Poet in Residence for the Civil Rights Corps in Washington, D.C., which is a nonprofit organization dedicated to challenging systemic injustice in the American legal system. Randall has conducted workshops, lectured, and toured numerous adult and juvenile detention centers across the nation to provide encouragement and hope for those entangled within the legal system. He is very interested in eradicating the language of incarceration that tends to re-criminalize those entangled in the legal system. Dr. Randall Horton is currently the only tenured full professor in the United States at a university or college with 7 felony convictions. He is a member of the experimental performance group Heroes Are Gang Leaders, which recently received the 2018 American Book Award in Oral Literature, and their latest musical project, the Baraka Sessions, was named Best Vocal Jazz Album by NPR. Randall's recent books include Hook, a Memoir, number 289-128, a collection of poetry, and in February 2022, Dr. Horton is set to release a new memoir, Dead Weight, a memoir and essays. Dr. Randall Horton is a professor of English at the University of New Haven. I hope you enjoy this episode.
Greetings. I'm here.
And how are you doing today?
I'm doing pretty good. Thank you for having me.
Great. Well, thank you so much for joining me today on Nerdacity podcast. And I want to congratulate you on your forthcoming book, Dead Weight, a memoir in essays. And that is due in February, correct?
Correct. Yep. The release is February 22nd. Actually.
Wonderful. I love the cover. It's like you with one of your cool hats on, you know. So that's like pretty signature for you, right? With the cool hats.
A little bit. A little bit of something.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And so, you know, what has it been like for you kind of segueing from, we know you as an award-winning poet and, you know, writing poetry and reading and such, and you have several books, kind of segueing from poetry to then, you know, memoir, you know, nonfiction. What has that been like?
Actually, it's been a pretty interesting and gratifying and frustrating at times experience, because, like, you know, when you're working in memoir, when I say frustrating, I mean the fact that you have to wrestle with the past, right? So that's always present. But, you know, I think for me, it was a natural transgression in terms of ways in which I wanted to tell a story or narrative, going from poetry and just sort of like experimenting with prose in various forms. And I knew that the story that I wanted to tell, while I could address it in poetry, I thought that I needed some time to sort of figure out how to tell that story, you know, through prose, which is why my first few books necessarily doesn't address incarceration in some deep and meaningful way. You know, my first book doesn't address it at all. And my second book touches on it a little bit, but not that much. And I think I was kind of working my way up to sort of thinking about, you know, the story I wanted to tell through memoir as well. So but yeah, I mean, I think when you come to, you know, memoir as well, um, operating, as a poet and through poetic structures and thinking about, the intensity of the line and, how the words mean as they bounce up against each other in this poetic way. I think it can be helpful as you come to prose to sort of make the narrative sing a little bit, and to as you begin to also think about layering and what does that mean in terms of points of view and deeper meanings within that narrative as well. So for me, it's been pretty cool to sort of go back and forth and think about that. Yeah, but like I say, working in memoir, creative nonfiction, with a memoir slant, it often can be, it's like um wrestling with the past, like I said, sometimes, and sometimes you have to go to those spaces where in order to go there you have to just place yourself there creatively, and as in persona, as in the persona of yourself, right? So,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, so it's cool. I mean, in terms of being able to sort of operate in those two genres. And so I kind of tend to go effortlessly back and forth between the two now. I think,
Mm.
and I don't know. Sometimes I'm not sure what it is I'm going to be. I'm working on, but it's going to be
You're right.
something. We'll figure it out later.
Yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
that's cool. And I was going to ask you because I know this is not your first, foray into memoir, because you have a previous memoir titled Hook
Hmm.
that was quite notable. And do you feel that that kind of started your journey with Hook? You were really starting with telling your story. And do you feel that Dead Weight is a continuation, or is it just is different from Hook?
Yes, it's totally different, but I think it also fills in some of the gaps. But then it looks at the life of Hook, which was sort of my title after the name I went by, when I was out in that world.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it looks back at Hook through a different lens, and is able to bring out certain observations through that narrative that I don't think I could have told in the first book, you know, and
Right.
right, and so, but it also um, sort of does go a little bit early on in my life and look at the ways in which I address race and race construction in Birmingham, growing up in the '60s. So I was born in '61, and so
Mm-hmm.
I talk about a lot of those things and being a part of that whole racial narrative, and then you jump into the racial narrative, and then you leave and you go into the national narrative, that national narrative of cocaine, right? And so
Mm-hmm.
how do those two play a part in terms of each other, right? And so but it's all looking at it through the lens of literature, because I'm actually talking to the Ralph Ellison's Invisible Man.
Right. I saw that in the description, and I'm
Yeah,
like,
and so yeah,
that's deep. Yeah.
yeah. And so so I'm actually having a conversation with this dude on 150 Riverside of Statue. Like, so we're sitting in the park and he can't talk, but I'm thinking about all these things, and it was sort of like bring that to life. And so it goes back and forth and switches to these sort of events. And there's this Baldwin moment we talk about, and it's always important to sort of buttress things with literature and literary figures and characters and things like that. So we talk about the Baldwin moment where race became a part of my consciousness when it
Mm-hmm.
wasn't before. It's that moment, he says, that moment when you realize that in the industry you was cheering for. I mean, the Cowboys and the Indians, and when you was cheering for the Cowboys to do the Indians dirty, the Indians really you. And so
Mm-hmm.
right, and so you become. So it's that moment. I think me and my mother. Well, I didn't think me and my mother. My mother was a teacher, and so she was part of that first great wave of teachers that integrated Birmingham County school system in 1973.
Mm-hmm.
And so, consequently, me being a child, we left all black school and went to another school, and so I talk about the moments when I realized that, we wasn't all in this thing together, and sort of like, being called, nigga and all that kind of stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
So there's that, and but then it goes a lot of different places, and but then we come out of that, and then at the core of it too is sort of looking at the ways in which I was the protagonist in somebody else's melodrama. And what I mean by that is like things in which the way history sort of like sets itself up in the way you have to live, or you're forced to live in some regards, as you try to make it through this world, through these social constructions that they have for you,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, that's just really, so, but also towards the end, there's an interview, that I go down to the Eleuthera, Bahamas, and I interview, one of my former, well, not a former, I said, well, former drug smuggler, who is a friend of mine. Because that's what we used to. I mean, that's what I used to do too, as well.
Mm-hmm.
Talk about, some of his interaction with the cartels in South America, and then,
So
huh?
wait, Randall, pause. So are you snitching? Are you able to are
No, I'm
you
not
able to
snitching. No, I'm not snitching. I'm not.
I'm like, whoa. Is this okay?
Yeah, it's okay, man. It's fine.
Okay.
I'm first
All
of
right.
all, haven't said anybody's name.
No, you have. I'm like, wait, I don't want to get you in trouble now.
But
This
now,
is
the
being
second of all, the statute of limitations is gone, man. What are you talking about?
Oh, I see. Okay, got you.
This stuff happened in the '80s, man. And so,
Oh, okay. This is all right, got
yeah, but
you.
that's what I went down. I went down to do an interview. I didn't go down to do. No, no, I write about it in my book. And
Okay.
so I got so I thought, so it comes from, you know, that piece I began to think about, when I was watching Snowfall.
Oh, yes.
Yeah,
That's what
John Singleton, and
Oh,
when we
yeah.
started that, and now, Walter Mosley is, taking that over, and I think they
Mhm.
just do a great job. As a matter of
Yeah.
fact, it's probably the only one that I kind of, and I know my word doesn't mean anything. The one I kind of validated, sort of being
Right.
really authentic, getting close to reality as you possibly can.
Mhm.
And so, but it got me to thinking too about, we talk about West Coast influence, and the government's influence on that, right? And I began to think about, well, if there's a West Coast narrative, well, what's the narrative? What's the sort of narrative on the East Coast, right? And me being a part of that, and able to, some people who were into that thing at that time, I was able to go and sort of talk about a couple of things, and sort of find, and sort of like really think, how that transportation route, originated from, and where it went to, and all that. And so, and that's when I say we become the protagonist of somebody else's melodrama. I say a lot of times you have, these cats in the '80s. I call them young hustler chemists, right?
Mhm.
Sort of make the that's what they were. I mean, because they were hustlers first of all, but they were chemists because they were cooking up a product, and they were mixing it, and they were figuring out how to expand it and do all of these things, right?
Mhm.
To sort of become, and they were entrepreneurs, right? And so at the same time, it was a setup in a lot of ways,
Right.
because
Mhm.
that line and stuff to come in and infiltrate these communities, that sort of really, and while at the same time, the prisons are beginning to sort of expand, and there's no, sort of the recourse is, to sort of go through that system, because there's no roadblocks in place to say, hey, really rehabilitation, hey, this, hey, that. No, it's mandatory time, blah 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 blah.
Mhm.
So, that's sort of got it. So that's why I wanted to tell, a piece of that, of what I knew. You know what I'm saying? And so,
Right.
yeah, and so it's not as sensationalized as, John Cena would do in terms of that, but it's just,
Mhm.
why my one is, my experience, and sort of having connection with somebody who once did something like that. You know what I mean? So,
Mhm.
yeah,
True. And that's really profound because you're seeing a contemporary connection. You
right. Yeah,
place
I'm making that
yeah.
contemporary connection, and
Mhm.
just for the for clarification. I mean, a lot of this stuff, I talk about in Hook in the first book, so it's nothing new, other
Mhm.
than the way I go and talk to him and bring that interview alive. See, what's really interesting about the interview is not necessarily an interview that I'm recounting. I sort of like bring it alive creatively. You know what I mean?
Sure.
And sort of like, how does that convoy go from San Marcos and to here and to my and so to fly through Haiti and then gets dropped in the Horseshoe Bay and Hatchet Bay, right? And then sort of like gets to go dropped in Cuban waters and driven to Miami and driven up I-95 and then going to Canada, man. Like, it's an interesting thing, in terms of all of that. So anyway, but
Yeah.
it's also too like the dead weight, So the dead weight that I talk about of carrying, like, being a part of something that you knew, destroyed a lot of people, and including yourself. Like, I don't exclude myself from that conversation. You know what I mean? And so that's part of this whole journey. I call it sort of rejuvenation, right? Sort of like the piece. It's right. So I'm trying to, like, and maybe some way ask for forgiveness for the things that I've done. You know what I mean? And sort of like going and sort of like to go into that spot and trying to figure it all out and make sense of it in some kind of way so I can come to grips with it, right?
Yeah.
Because yeah, I mean, that's just the reality of it for me in my context and sort of what I'm writing about in my history.
So let me ask.
Yeah.
That the conversation with Ralph Ellison's Invisible Man statue, and then you bring Baldwin into it. Is this sort of a the guardians of the literary, the Black tradition in literature? Are they necessary? Your narrative, sort of almost like they're passing the baton off to you. You talk about writing in prose, and although this is not new, you're still continuing on with this. And so, what is the meaning, truly, literary wise, for Ralph, for the allusion to Invisible Man, and also for the presence of Baldwin in your work?
Right. Well, with Ralph Ellison, and it's the invisibility too. So coming from Birmingham and understanding sort of some of the the racial things, I think, and understanding that, but also not in a certain kind of way. You know what I mean? We're going through life and not really. It took a minute for me to understand how invisible I was in the grand scheme of the narrative of what people were doing. You know what I mean? And so consequently, I thought that I'm thinking about the protagonist in the way that, he went to college with this really, grand idea of what life was, but then through a series of events, he falls into the real world, right? And bounces around. So there's a similarity there with me as well. And so I wanted to make those connections, and it becomes only through series of events that you become to realize that you're really the protagonist in somebody's melodrama in terms of life. And so that was important to me. And then Baldwin, I think for me, it's always, I love how he comes at race. And so for me, that moment where he talks about it, and I think it's Oxford at the Cambridge debate. I think it's a Oxford debate or something like that. Yeah, that's what it is. And I forget 60 something. I can't remember the exact date now. But that's the moment. I think. Of course, his writing. Everything. I'm on that. But that sort of like debate. Really sticks with me. As sort of really honing in terms of the problem with the American experiment.
True indeed. Thank you for that explanation. And so, and can I also ask you, when you talk about being invisible, would this be because now I'm seeing your life, and I'm seeing you, as you mentioned, coming from Birmingham, and what you went through pre being a poet, or a professor and all. Are you saying you were invisible even before the point of the experience of incarceration,
No
or
question.
all of that is encompassed in invisibility?
Yeah, no question. I mean, I think I was invisible from the day I was born in Birmingham.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I was born. I was a premature baby, and they had to rush me and my mother to the hospital, a segregated hospital, South Highlands. And
Mm-hmm.
they didn't have time to set up the makeshift incubator, to put me in. So they put me in an all white incubator ward, right?
Mm-hmm.
And my mama couldn't see me she couldn't see me. She was excluded from coming because she was Negro.
Wow. Okay.
So things
Mm.
started pretty early for me in that regard. So
Mm-hmm.
I point to that. There's a lot, but and so it begins there, and I talk about that too. And then so for 11 days I had to be 5 pounds, and so for 11 days she had to call every day, to see so she had a baby, but she really didn't. You know what I mean?
Right.
So yeah.
She
Um,
couldn't see him. Wow, literally, she could not see you there.
no, literally she couldn't
Right.
come. It was it was
Wow.
so it was a hypocritical. First of all, you got a white man trying to save a black baby.
Right.
And the segregated hospital when niggas really ain't allowed. And then you put him in the
And you put him in the white baby.
and then you say can't nobody else come see like his mom.
Wow, that's crazy.
Really get to be
Yeah.
5 pounds. No, that's dead serious. That's what
Yeah.
So we begin to talk about. We talk about ways in which you become racialized. And so not even thinking about it. And so you become this sort of without even having to say so in it, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's what I mean. Somebody else's mouth, somebody else's way of thinking about something that's totally adverse to the way of your concept of thinking.
Sure. That's deep, truly. And, now just switching up just a bit. And so, Hook, does that mean, because this is coming out February 2022, were you then writing some of this book during the pandemic?
No,
Or
we were going over edits for this book.
okay,
Yeah, by the time these things come out, you've been working on them forever, man.
for a while,
Yeah, even
right?
when Hook came out, I think I've been shopping it and trying to figure it out for a couple of years.
Mm-hmm.
And then by the time it took another year and a half or two for it to come out. So, that's
Yeah.
in the meantime, I was working on poetry and then working on, and working on various forms. So the first part would just be, so the first part of Dead Weight, actually, that protagonist thing, it sort of really came about because I was asked to do the Ralph Ellison lecture in Tuskegee Institute, right?
Okay.
So you
Mm-hmm.
can't make it up, you know what I mean? So
Right. Wow.
No, so I'm staying on 135th and Riverside at the time, and I actually was going up to, I would go up to that, walk that route on Riverside and check out the stash and hang out and try to write sometimes to be influenced. And so when I found out I was going to be a speaker there, I actually just sort of thought about it. What would it be to have a conversation with this cat?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So anyway.
And so, Randall, so your collection, number 289-128 poems, that came out in 2020. So that did come out during the pandemic.
It did.
Okay. Were you, again, would this be the same thing? You weren't necessarily writing it during the pandemic, but it had been in the works for a while.
Right. It had been in the works for a while, and it came out, during the pandemic. We pushed it back a little bit too, as a matter of fact. It was supposed to come out maybe that summer in June, well, maybe summer release, so we moved it to September.
Right.
Yeah,
because we were coming out of lockdown. Things weren't fully open.
So
then.
I had a virtual, I did the virtual thing and et cetera with that. But we were able to do a few things with it. And so But yeah, that came about through a series of fellowships and things I got. A couple of them, I was like poet in residence at the Civil Rights Corps in Washington D.C., and I was had a right to return fellowships, and all of these was like based on addressing issues around incarceration, and so the work just sort of like came, from those experiences. But with with the Civil Rights Corps, I was able to, rethink some things. As I was going into this poetically, looking at the work that they do, in just around the country, and the resources that I had from the right to return was good as well. So it gave me that space to write and think about. And I looked around, and I had sort of a collection, and so I began to concentrate on it a little bit more. Because I didn't think after coming out of Memoir I was going to jump right in and write a poetry manuscript, but it happened like that.
But it just happened, right?
Yeah, it just sort of happened like that. And in between that process, that's how Dead Weight sort of became, with the Ellison thing, and then these sort of essays, and then I began to sort of make the links. And that's why I didn't want to do like the memoir that I had done in the way that I had done it before. I wanted to do something a little bit different, and so that's why it's a memoir and linked essays, right? Through linked essays.
Right.
Yeah. So, yeah. Yep.
And so, what was your writing life like, other than, the release, kind of waiting on the releases of your new books, just in terms of craft and putting pen to paper? What was your writing experience during the pandemic, and has anything changed for you presently because of kind of what we went through in the last year or two?
Well, I was actually working on a project called Radical Reversal, and it's a musical project. So I was writing for that, and I was using some existing work, translating it, for audio, for recording project that we're doing based on criminal justice. And so that's what I was doing during the summer. And so I collaborated with one of my bandmates in the larger band, Heroes and Gang Leaders, I'm a part of, Devin Wallman. And so doing a couple of those fellowships, I was able to get, since I was so isolated, I got some recording equipment and set up shop over in my basement.
Wow.
Yeah,
That's cool.
we actually went back and forth, because he's the musician, and and so we worked back and forth, and so we actually created like 10 tracks, and we're gonna perform at a few places as Radical Reversal. It's gonna be like 4 of us, and part of it, the Radical Reversal thing, is we're most very social justice oriented, and part of what we're going to be doing is going into prisons and jails, and providing recording studios, the small recording studios, and these portable pop-up performance spaces where they can do performances. And then we're going to actually do workshops and some seminars on creative writing and music and collaborations, and our goal is to have them do a live stream collaborative performance of their work, live stream through CCTV and DOC, and perhaps outside through various social justice platforms. And I know I'm telling you all this, and you're like, where the hell are you gonna get all this money from?
No, hey, it is what.
But no, I can't really say a whole lot right now, because I can't say a whole lot right now. But
I
wouldn't be talking about it if it ain't gonna happen.
Sure. No, it sounds wonderful. And what's so nice is that my next question for you was going to be, what is the poet's responsibility during these times relating to social justice, politics, education, and community?
Yeah, and so Radical Reversal, sort of, based on the premise that we we believe an artist can do two things, and that is sort of realize their creative practice, at the same time while giving back, um, and creating structures and things that sort of continuously live, as you're sort of giving back. And so for me, that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to, provide sort of a blueprint of how social justice organizations, and artists can collaborate in various ways, through resources that they already have, to make these things happen. Right? You don't realize you have the resources. You just have to understand when you're getting the resources that you have, how you articulate that. Right? And sometimes it's not all about you as the artist, you know, as it is the experience as an artist.
Sure. And, thank you for that, Randall. And I really do. It sounds like a wonderful initiative you have going. And is this in Connecticut or just the northeastern areas?
Yeah, well, I can't necessarily say right
Oh,
now.
you can't necessarily say, okay, all right.
I can't say right now.
Wow.
I gave you a scoop.
You gave me a lot. Okay, all right. Well, thank you for that. I appreciate it. I heard.
Yeah,
I
really,
here first.
trust me, if I could, I would blast
Oh,
it.
okay, you would. Okay.
But
Well, thank you for that.
next year, we'll talk about it. So, but that's what I'm sort of honed in on right now, trying to make those things happen.
It's wonderful.
Yeah. So, but I can say we will be going into a women's facility first.
Okay.
Because I think there's something to the idea when we talk about incarceration, and I look at a lot of these places where I go, talk about some of these things, and the women's there are a lot of women at the table,
right?
Period. So it was important for us, and then with my band, there's a all of us, I guess 4 of us, and Melanie's going to go in and do some stuff on the viola, and Devin is going to do some digital drum stuff, and we're going to bring in people to do seminars and how to feel good about themselves, and so it's really an experience, man. To get back to that, I didn't want to sort of, I kind of slid back into that, but it's sort of like it's just sort of been kind of exciting to think about.
Sounds like it. I can hear you looking forward to it and your excitement and all. Yeah.
No doubt, man, no doubt. So there you go. So that's what that's what I got going forward right now, and hopefully I'll write a poem or 2 in the meantime.
Oh, you totally will, because you on a roll, brother. Yeah.
Well, we do what we can, like say, sometimes, poems, man, we live with poems all the time. We our life is a poem. And so it's just whenever it comes out of your body, right? And so whenever it comes out of whatever what you're thinking. And so someone told me a long time ago, and they told me, I think we were workshopping a poem, and it might have been like when I was in Washington still. And they asked the question about, when did you start working on that poem? And I was like, man, probably about 2 months ago, right?
Yeah.
I wasn't a deep thinker then. Luckily, my friend the guy he's like, no, brother, you've been working on that poem for a while, and
right?
It made sense. So, whenever we're ready, and through practice and getting off our butt and sort of doing something from time to time, I think we'll get there, because we got to do that too, as you know. So yeah, man,
that's cool. And so, Randall, you are currently professor of English at the University of New Haven. Is that correct?
Yes.
And so, how are you able to, connect your writing with being an educator and kind of usher in new, I guess, emerging poets, emerging writers into the community, and at the same time, kind of keep yourself steady with your projects and your arts? How is that in terms of balancing your work?
It's it's a balancing act all day, every day. That's how it is. It's never a straight line either. It's wobbling the whole way going across. Luckily, I haven't. I'm still holding on.
You still holding on, okay?
Yeah, no. So it's like everybody else, man. So, but one of the things I do try to do is sort of like intertwine everything with my practice. So even I do bring in artists. I try to share what I'm doing with my students in terms of my writing, where I go. If I go do talks, and if I go working on a project, I share those things with them so they can be more part of than just the experience of a text or just an assignment in the classroom. So I try to, definitely do that. That's part of, I think that's definitely essential. And then also by bringing in, young writers through our reading series, I'm able to sort of, make plugged in to who's like doing what. And so I like to, see, kind of keep, my hand on the pulse of like what's happening. You can't, know everything, but I still
right.
I'm still very interested in like, what's going on. And I think, that's critical for me. And I didn't think it's, and like I say, it's beneficial, for where, my job as well. So I try to intersect those things in terms of the classroom, but the papers are the papers, and you can't get around them. You're never going to stop, having that time to sort of. But I try to make it, but just like put it, just for an example, I'm bringing in the Hakeem Booty for my class.
Oh, wonderful! Oh, that's going to be a real treat. Yeah,
I'm teaching the Black Arts movement, like so. And I was like,
yeah, you got to have him. You teach him Black Arts. He's
you know
the
what I'm
one.
saying? And
yeah.
so we were talking about. I said, wait, let me see if I can get him. He was one of my teachers at Chicago State.
Oh yeah, right. You got your MFA from Chicago State.
Yeah,
right?
I was in. I took his class, the Black Arts Movement, literally. So
wow,
I have a relationship with him. So I was like, Baba, can you? Well, I had to go through Miss Rose at Third World.
Right. Oh yeah, I know Miss Rose.
Yeah,
that's
you gotta
right.
go through Miss Rose.
Yeah, because that's how I had him on the podcast. So that's how I got him.
No, you gotta go through Miss Rose.
Right.
Yeah. And so Miss Rose, cool. Anyway, but so he'll be there, soon. But and so it's things like that, being able to put my hand on something and say, hey, we can have a real live experience here. You know what I mean? And
that's right. You can bring it to life for the students. In other words, it's not just on the page. This is real life
real
history.
Life stuff,
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's exciting. I'm sure that's exciting for them too.
No, they hype because we was looking at him in the Norton, right? So
yeah.
Now you look at it, now you got this big old book you're carrying around, and so you got all these poets, and you see this person. He's like, oh, now and then I'm trying to tell them the stories that he's told me.
Wow.
And I'm saying, well, wait a minute, let
him tell it. Exactly. Wow.
So we're kind of excited about that. But so anyway, going back to your point, is like being able to do all that, in my job sort of helps, the whole writing process, staying in contact with writers and just sort of being around that and being able to share my work too. So, yeah.
That's great. And, you mentioned when 289-128 came out, you were doing some virtual events and whatnot. So just in current, how have you been able to, through the pandemic, this last year, stay connected with your audience of readers, your fans and followers?
Well, social media, obviously, gets you it does what it can. And I've done some stuff. I think during the pandemic, our band had we had a residency in Brooklyn at Issue Project Room, excuse me. And so we were able to work on my Radical Reversal project there, and get some really good footage of it. And so I was able to pump that, you know what I mean, and sort of, audio and so it was really done nice. So that was good. And Other than that, man, not a whole lot. I went to my first in-person reading in Andover, Massachusetts, last month.
Oh,
Um,
wow.
and
Mm-hmm.
then I went into a prison, actually the same, because I went to the Southampton in Essex County.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, so I went to the, and so it was really actually pretty, um, you know, good in terms of like, I think, while I enjoyed the reading, I really
Mm-hmm.
enjoyed my time on the inside, man, talking to those guys. I was there for like,
Wow.
man, it was like,
How long were you there? You were there for how long?
I was on the inside like 2 hours. I stayed 2 hours. I think I did the
Mm.
reading from like 4 to 6 and then 4 to 5:30, I think. And then we got to the prison at 6 and I stayed until like 8 o'clock.
Wow. I bet they
So
love that. And y'all were just talking
now we
like
just
at that
kicking it,
point.
man.
Okay.
I kicked, we
Mm-hmm.
kicked it. I came, I talked, told him I told him about myself, read a little something here and there, and then we went from there, man. And it was just like effortless conversation. So
Mm-hmm.
those are the kind of moments, man, I really live for. I would do those for free, um,
Wow.
because I
Mm.
think, it reminds me, of where I was at one point, like
Sure.
right there in that seat, looking at somebody
Mm-hmm.
coming in trying to do something and wondering, what can I learn from this person?
Wow. What kind of encouragement do you offer them, Randall?
Well, I mean, I think Bert, one of the things I just, tell me, this, is to keep trying to show up, and whether that's mentally or creatively, um, and I tell them that there is, a possibility for a life, on the outside.
Mm-hmm.
So, never think that, that's not possible, as you're going through what you go through here. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Because from every person has their own time to do in their own situation. So you can't, that's something most times I stay away from that. I don't talk about
Mm-hmm.
things. But I do
Sure.
talk about, when I hit the ground and, the roadblocks I had to overcome and all those kind of things, sort of let them know that they are going to be there. And so, you can't run from them. And so you can prepare yourself even now and wherever you are, um, in your time to sort of, make it to the outside and go, but then maybe some of them may not make it to the outside. You're right. So then it becomes more of a question about how can I live my life and how can I get the best out of what I am,
Mm-hmm.
even if it's nothing but through words and writing and all of those things, which happens, man. I'm on, Penn Prison Writing Program board, our advisory board, and
Mm-hmm.
I've actually done some reading for the content. I mean, for the fellowships that we give, for writers addressing conservation, and we get a lot of good, and we get a lot of good material from people on the inside,
Mm.
for this fellowship, and we've
Yeah.
actually awarded. We make it a point every year to award some to those on the inside because we're talking about them, of course.
Right.
I mean, and so, but just reading some of them, sometimes some of those people aren't going to ever get out,
Mm.
and they
Yeah.
understand that, right? But they
Right.
also understand the power of language, right? And so
Mm.
it becomes humbling in that way that there is something to this whole process of trying to think creatively and do all
Mm-hmm.
those things. So it's not time wasted, this whole idea of reading and whatever your mind, what can your mind do?
Right.
I just had two cats the other day that wrote me from the inside on this program that we're doing, and they want to start a nonprofit and sort of donate all of the books they sort of donated to them and give them to kids, right? So they're thinking, right? So that's
Right.
what I mean. Like, how can you really change that process? Like, okay, well, we in this, but there's some other things that we could do,
That we
right?
can do. Mm-hmm.
Right. So yeah.
Mm-hmm. Wow. That's heavy. That's wonderful. And so, Randall, are you, I think you might have touched on that a little bit with the previous initiative, but How are you collaborating with any other artists at this time? Any other writers or educators? Is there any collaboration going on? Well, you mentioned your band. I know
Yeah,
you have a band. Yeah.
yeah. Radical Reversal. Like I said,
Mm-hmm.
I'm collaborating with Devin Wallman, and we're doing some work with Melanie Dyer, who's on the violas. She has a group called We Free Strings, and this guy Daniel Moreno, actually, who's in California. He's percussion, and Paul Brody on trumpet, who's actually in Berlin. So but we're all over, and we use the Cheshire Holmes on drums sometimes as well. So
Mm-hmm.
um, those that collaboration, and I've worked with the poet Monica Ong,
Oh
ONG.
yeah, I'm familiar with
Yeah,
Monica.
she's
Mm-hmm.
sick. Oh my gosh, she's killing it in terms of her
Mm-hmm.
work. No, I mean, but I've been knowing Monica like for years. We used to workshop in New Haven before she even had a book. And I think I was working on Hook at the time, actually, my memoir.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, we did a thing during the pandemic. It was like a sort of a two-part thing, and I think she put music, sort of audio sound to it. And it was a poem about her grandfather, and about her grandfather's, and it was in her grandfather's voice, right? And so she had me read that. So we was going back and forth in this voice thing, right? So that was
Mm-hmm.
pretty cool. I think it was Yellow something. I can't think of it. I can't remember the name of it now. But so we did that, and yeah. So, but most of it's been around either the Radical Reversal Project or the Heroes and Gang Leaders, where we did the thing in the Shoe Project room. We did a full thing where um so it's like a box set of
Mm-hmm.
individual projects, and then a full box set of film. What sort of these individual projects where each of us sort of did our own thing for about an hour, and then we'd have an hour performance as well. So, but that's been about it in terms of collaborative, things.
Mm-hmm.
Pandemic, yeah, yeah,
Well, Randall, I definitely want to thank you for years ago, you accepted my work for Reverie, Midwest Journal of African American Poets, I think published by Aquarius Press.
yeah,
Um,
yeah. That
and
was
mhm.
that was Willow. That was the beginning. That was
Willow,
the
that's right,
early.
Willow Books.
That was
Mm-hmm.
it wasn't what we hadn't had. We didn't have Willow Books. I think when we accepted your work, it was Reverie, and then it was Aquarius Press, which was
Mm-hmm.
Heather Buchanan. But later on, maybe a couple of years later, we started Willow Books
Oh, okay.
in
Mm-hmm.
sort of response, because that's why I started with Heather, being the editor of Reverie.
A Reverie. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I did that for like a couple of years, and then so we did both Reverie and Willow Books for a long time. We started with
Right.
a couple of years ago, but we kept that going. Yeah, Reverie was like really dear to me, man, because I think when I first started, the only thing what drew me to Reverie was I was in my MFA program. I submitted some poems, and she paid me out of her pocket, like she was paying people out of her pocket, man, for a while,
Mm.
like
Mm.
$25. So she sent me a check for $75, man.
Wow.
And that was the first time anybody would pay me for a poem. Right?
Wow.
I
Mm.
was so hyped, man. I emailed like, "Yo, anytime you need anything, let me know." My big
And
mouth.
right. And she was like, well, actually.
Well, no, man. That's what I don't think you
Uh-huh.
have Willow Books because of that, but I'm proud of what we did at Willow. So
That's wonderful. And were you involved with Title Basin Review at one point as
yeah,
well?
yeah, well, yeah. With
Okay.
Truth Thomas and Melanie Henderson, we
Okay. Well, I
started
think
that,
you
and
all used. So I
Fred,
had
Fred.
another a poem in Title Basin, and so I want to thank you for that as
Right.
well.
Yeah. Yeah.
I was like,
Yeah, man.
man,
See, I used
Randall
to
is
pull
like my
these circular things in poetry, man.
yes.
I love how they line up sometimes. So
Really wonderful because you've
yeah.
really been a part of some great publications.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so, Randall, we've come to that point in the podcast where I love to ask you if you have an excerpt from your forthcoming memoir to read, or even 3 to 4 poems from one of your recent collections that you like to share with our listeners.
Let's see. Yeah, hold on a second. I'm gonna probably read a little bit from the memoir.
Okay.
Yeah. Um, I read the opening. And I said and excuse me. I said I don't know why I said rejuvenation. It's reevaluation.
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 And you know what, Randall? I thought of the word renewal as well.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Do
Yeah.
you resonate with that renewal?
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
you know the way you described it, and this is beautiful, and I'm going to be thinking about this for days now. You going from invisibility to visibility, and it looks like two parts, and it's like here's part one life, and then you're now living another, and talk about visibility. You're an award-winning poet, you are a professor, you're a lecturer, and you are going into uh, prisons and various organizations, really doing some great work. So
Mm-hmm.
what a way to become visible.
Yeah, man. Thanks, man. So
Mm.
I think, yeah, the power of language, right? So
Mm-hmm.
there you go. Yeah. So I read a little bit of reevaluation. It was the slow opening of April before cherry blossoms bloomed on Constitution Avenue and lit the exit out of the city. Uptown, in an 8 block radius, avenues and streets demarcated the impending white bloom in America. Angel Dust or Love Boat PCP became a forgotten beautiful high to a butt naked addicted fiend now in love with a drug decomposed to a beige rock crack. Fiend pledged to death do as part of prison, whichever came first. A generation was trying to get paid in full before 1988 Summer of Love and thereafter casualties of galore. Once dead leaves rematerialize on maple trees, unable to block the perfume of July. Sweltering heat plus a boy's decaying body in the alley behind O Street Market, lying face up in rigor. His pockets inside out. Not one red cent left after the jack and subsequent murder. Can you imagine a lost city? Reimagine what you know. The beloved father strung out on freebase, listening to go-go music, addicted to bass, Trouble Funk, EU, and Chuck Brown. Bass on every street corner, begetting death. Addicted to the image, we got bass before two-piece and mumbo sauce, before asylum, before love, bass, then ready rock, then crack, then death. Being real became fashionable. The baseball bat, another weapon for us bass heads. Can't accident a red line in his grave. He couldn't read illiterate to save his too young life. Bass began a revolution no one imagined, steeped in vials with red caps, plastic baggies, aluminum foil, and years later, imagine we abused ourselves seeking a stairway to utopia in a locale called Dodge City, better known as Washington, D.C. Real damn straight. Follow the sin of destruction. Blame it on base. It was a slow closing of a decade. Family units losing the poor father. And the dear mother offering her body, the sinful flesh, on 13th and Logan Circle, prepared to violate herself with a trick of John. This is a place where tragic memories of the dead and affected pile up day after day, an unforgettable tale. There you go. I'll stop there.
Up there, it's
Thank you.
lyrical. You're
Yeah.
welcome. Had a
Yeah.
great lyrical quality to it. It really sounded like poetry. And this is in your new, your forthcoming memoir, Dead Weight, a Memoir and Essays, correct?
Correct. Correct. Yeah. No doubt. Well, you know, like I said, I come at it with a poet's touch, man. I try to at least anyway. It can be a curse at times trying to get thinking like a poet in between an essay is like some wild stuff, man.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, yeah. So that's where I was. So I wanted to read the opening of that last section that I was explaining a little bit earlier in terms of like that reflection of sort of the carnage left behind, and what better way to sort of look at it poetically through that lens. So, yeah. But sure.
Certainly.
Yeah, yeah.
And, what are you looking forward to in terms of the release of your book after the new year in February? Do you have some events and different presentations planned for it?
Well, we're working on that right now. But yeah, we're getting the schedule together. But I'll probably do a book release in prison, the federal prison in Danbury. So that's probably actually where I'll do it. To be honest with you,
Mm-hmm.
they'll be having copies of the book uh, through a program, the Million Book Project, which is a literary ambassador, and so. Part of that is they'll be using my book along with a few other writers as well. I'm just not the only one.
Mm-hmm.
But for me, it just sort of seems right to sort of do that. Yeah.
Sure.
Yep.
Oh,
And
that sounds wonderful.
that's what I
Mm-hmm.
think. Yeah. So yeah. Anyways, that's what I'm gonna do there, and then I'm working on some stuff here and there. But I really want to maybe try to do something at the Civil Rights um, Institute down in Birmingham. So I'm working on that as well.
Wonderful. And that's like full circle. Have you
Yeah.
been back there since? You
I've
probably
actually done.
have,
I did
right?
my first reading there,
Oh, okay.
so
Okay,
that was
cool.
full circle. But I'm actually trying to do it with the Radical Reversal Project, because which will be um, in full effect around the same time the book comes out. So I'm trying to do a few things around both of those things together. Like I said,
Sure.
so we'll work that. But then I'm hoping to go up time. I'm hoping to be pretty busy since the pandemic is not here, right? Because I
Mm-hmm.
think when 289-128 came out, all the things that we were sort of planning had to be sort of either dropped or smooth as Zoom. So
Sure. Yeah, that's going to be a lot of fun, and then the weather will get warm, and you'll have those spring readings
yeah,
and all of that. So that will definitely be a great thing to look forward to.
yep.
And so, Randall, just as we're closing out, can you please tell us where can we purchase and pick up a copy of Dead Weight, a memoir and essays when it's released, and how we can further just really support you and your work?
Well, I mean, you can go to Northwestern University Press and order it right on the press dead weight, and it's right there. And so that's probably the easiest way to sort of like help me out right now in terms of like being able to support the press, which is run by a minority woman, African American woman named Parnisha Jones. If you don't know, she's
Oh yeah, I know Pernisha. She's
well,
a
I'm not. I
poet.
mean, I think I knew you knew.
Oh.
I was speaking to the. I was. Oh, I know you know, but I was speaking to the audience who may not know.
Sure.
I wouldn't know. Yeah, I knew you.
Sorry,
Yeah, I
I
know
didn't mean
you.
to jump. I was like, oh, that was exciting to know who that was. Yeah.
Yeah. I didn't want to, disrespect you like that because I know you probably had. Yeah, I know you had to know Parnisha is, and so, as you know, actually, it's just as you know, Parnisha Jones is running that, and they took a it took a chance to sort of get this out in the world, and they've really been doing a good job. And so I just want to pay a little homage to them and sort of like make support them in that sort of stream. But you can always go on my website, randallhorton.com, and order Hook 289-128 and Dead Weight when it comes out. If you want a signed copy, can definitely do that. Not a problem. Always.
Wonderful. I want a signed copy, so I'll definitely be looking at how to get that.
There you go, roundthehorton.com.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, definitely hit that up. Now, I'm not against roundthehorton.com.
Okay, got you. Yes,
Yeah,
thank you for that. And then
yeah,
otherwise, we can certainly follow you on social media. I know you're on Instagram and
yeah,
Twitter. Is that correct?
yeah. Twitter, yeah,
Uh-huh.
and I think what is it? Twitter is R Horton, RG, no, R Horton 4.
4.
Yeah, yeah, and it's RG Horton and Instagram, and Facebook. You can find me. Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, Randall, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure to talk with you on Nerdacity podcast today. And again, congratulations on your forthcoming book, Dead Weight, a memoir and essays, out in February of 2022. And just wish you the best of your success and creativity heading into this new year.
Okay, well, thank you so much. It's been great sitting down talking to you on Nerdacity, and like I said, the Nerdacity. I love that. I love the title, man.
Thank you so much.
That is so kicking. So I appreciate taking the time to sort of have me on and talk about my upcoming projects. That means a lot. I think we talked about it. Life comes full circle, and so I appreciate that.
Yes, indeed, Randall. Thanks so much. And I'll continue to follow you and look forward to everything that you're doing.
Likewise now. This is likewise.
Okay. Okay. Take care, Randall.
All right. Take care. Bye-bye.
Okay, bye. Yeah. And you were just listening to episode 36 featuring Randall Horton, award-winning poet, author, memoirist, and professor. Be sure to pick up a copy of Randall's forthcoming book, Dead Weight, a memoir in essays. And you can visit his website at randallhorton.com or follow him on social media at Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. If you've been enjoying Nerdacity podcast, please consider supporting future episodes by giving a small donation and visiting anchor.fm/DuEwa support, or by sending your small donation to paypal.me/DuEwaWorld. Also, tweet Nerdacity Podcast at NerdacityPod1. You can also follow on Instagram and see who's forthcoming on the podcast at Nerdacity Podcast. Thanks again for listening. Take care.